Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage. I'm your host, Jim Gramm, and joining me today, Colin Camper and Billy Brant. On today's show, we are going to recap UFC Zagreb. We're also going to preview Glory 29 Copenhagen, and we're also going to preview UFC on Fox 19 in Tampa, Florida this Saturday, Teixeira versus Evans. As I said, I'm your host, Jim Gramm. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Gramm. Sitting next to me is Colin Camper, who runs our Facebook page, facebook.com/Beyond the Cage podcast. How's it going today, Colin?
It's good. I'm trying out the mustache this week, so I'm feeling pretty confident.
Well, I mean, it worked for Timothy Johnson this weekend, so.
Yeah.
All right, Billy Brant sitting third chair today. You can follow him on Twitter at WBrant21. How's it going today, Billy?
Terrible. Colin's trying out the mustache this week, so it really ruined my week.
All right, before we get to some of the fights this weekend, got to talk about, speaking of Glory, I want to get into this big signing for them and Invicta, as they were able to sign Tiffany Time Bomb Van Susen, and this is a big signing, getting her to work for both companies. She's going to initially start in Glory, and she will actually make her Glory debut at Glory 30, very close to her hometown there, I believe in Riverside, California, so very close to home. She will be competing, a former Lion Fight 2-division champion, now making her Glory debut, and then she will also fight for Invicta later on this year, most likely in the flyweight division at 125 pounds. 0-1 so far in MMA, only fought one time, got submitted in the first round, but 14-2 as a professional kickboxer with one draw. And she's kind of made headlines as of late because there was a big dispute between her and Lion Fight, as Lion Fight was actually not paying her for her last couple appearances there. And at one point, I'm not sure if that's still the case now with this new contract with Glory and Invicta, but she actually put up on her Instagram that she was going to sell her Lion Belt championships because she needed the money. She wasn't getting paid from Lion Fight, and a lot of companies and promotions then were searching for her services after hearing that, and Glory and Invicta end up kind of reaping the benefits. Some people were surprised she went to those organizations as opposed to doing MMA and kickboxing for Bellator, but I think she made the right move. I think if she does have aspirations of doing MMA eventually, you know, if she ends up getting good at it, if you want to eventually be the best in MMA, you want to fight in the UFC. And I think Invicta is the easiest path of leading you to the UFC instead of fighting over in Bellator, which we know has notoriously done those like restricted free agent type contracts. So sometimes it's hard to get out of Bellator's thumb there. So I think she made the right move by signing with Glory and Invicta. Like I said, easier path to the UFC. And also, you're going to face the best kickboxers in the world with Glory. It is the top organization. I mean, Bellator hasn't even had their first kickboxing event, so it's really hard to say what talent they're going to bring to the table. So I think just kind of from the outside looking, I think she made the better move signing with Glory and Invicta as opposed to heading over with Bellator.
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember getting the blast email about it. Not a lot of fighters get a blast email for themselves when they get signed anywhere. But it's nice to see that Glory's also making good on their stance of like fighters aren't just solely for Glory fighting. They're fine with them fighting other organizations, whether it be Invicta or whatnot. So it'll be interesting to see her balance out both and possibly try and get a foothold in Invicta, which is a good platform for her to really try and establish herself as an MMA fighter. But like you're saying, she's probably going to end up trying to get to the UFC at some point. Depends how Invicta turns out for her, and being on the UFC Fight Pass platform, will definitely help her. So,
yeah, this is I guess first and foremost, I'm just happy for her. Hopefully, she gets taken care of and paid because that's a shame on Lion Fights over there. But second, yeah, it's exactly like Jim said. I mean, if you want to get to the UFC, Invicta is 100% the best route. And if you want to go, hey, I'm just a kickboxer, you're going to fight the best kickboxers in the world at Glory. So for her, seems like the best route. Hopefully get you paid and taken care of. I mean, it's a shame you're on there selling your belts. I mean, it really sucks, but
she will be taking on Jerry Fist of Fury Steitzes, which is actually a rematch between the two as they fought in a Muay Thai bout back in 2012, which I believe saw Tiffany get the victory there. So that should be a pretty solid fight that will be on the Super Fight Series, shown on the Fight Pass for Glory 30 on May 13th, with, of course, the main event being Simon Marcus against Dustin Jacoby for the middleweight title.
Loaded day.
All right, speaking of Glory, let's continue on there. Glory 29 coming up Saturday, April 16th, of course, will be shown live, starting first with the Fight Pass for the Super Fight Series, and then we'll switch to ESPN3 for the live streaming broadcast from Copenhagen, and then I believe shown on tape delay the next day on ESPN2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Looking at the Super Fight Series, the highlight fight, big contender here in the light heavyweight division with Moeska as he takes on Hammer Lane. Moeska 13-3 overall, 3-2 in Glory, and I believe he's coming off a loss in his last fight. Yeah, he lost to Saulo Calvari. That was at the Dynamite 1 card with Bellator, which I believe was for the light heavyweight championship. Besides Calvari losing to him twice, he's beaten everybody else. So this is a fight for him to try to get back in top contention. And obviously with a new champion in light heavyweight, that bodes well for Moeska here, taking on, not a lot of Glory experience in his Frenchman opponent, but a lot of overall experience. 54-12 does Hammer Lane bring into the table. So I think this is a pretty big fight here in this light heavyweight division.
Yeah, especially with the name like Hammer. It sounds too much like hammer for me, and I'm pretty sure it's French for hammer. But I mean, I've always been a big fan of an experience, and while he doesn't have the Glory experience, he does have the overall experience, and I feel like it's just going to be a pretty solid fight to headline that Super Fight Series. But we'll see. Zach, he's got enough steam behind him to try and get back up there to title contention and everything. I mean, and right now in Glory, 3-2, that's kind of like the par for most records, actually. To a lot of people, it doesn't seem like that's a lot of fights, but honestly, that's a significant amount of fights in Glory, considering that's almost half of Zach's record, actually. He's 5 fights in Glory, and he's 13-1 overall. So it's kind of interesting to look at.
Man, this dude Zidane's about to come in here with his headbutt.
Yeah, his opponent, Zinedine.
Zinedine, yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. It's exciting, man. All these Glory cards are good. I'm sorry to go off track, but one thing I want to ask Glory is come to Detroit, man. They've been talking about it. I mean, I don't mean to go on this tangent. We're talking about this fight now.
No, that's how you get favors. Yeah. You got to ask. Franklin, we know what you look like now.
They brought it up. They got to announce the next one. Me and Jim were talking about it soon.
They're probably, we were hoping they announced Glory 31 at Glory 29.
Probably. Franklin is a Detroit boy who said himself, you make it out here, we will buy you dinner. We'll go to Parks.
And
Parks
please come during the summer, because it's kind of cold in the winter, traffic and snow. Just come during when it's nice, And they said, all right. Anyways, let's get to this heavyweight tournament, the much debated heavyweight tournament. Of course, when we did last week's show, the news literally just hit as we put the episode up of the 4th competitor, and it's not who we thought it would be. I think what happened, and we'll get to all our thoughts here, I think they had 1 or 2 guys pegged, either injuries or recuperation, I think kept them from this tournament. In fact, I was telling Billy before, Guito Infante, who we saw at Glory 27, he actually has a championship fight. He's the champion of another organization called WGP. He's actually set to defend his title, I think, either this weekend or the following weekend. So, of course, he wasn't going to fight, and possibly go 6 rounds when he has already a contract for another fight. So he was kind of out. We kind of mentioned a short turnaround for Vigny, having just fought last month for Glory in Paris. So we were kind of like, who are they going to get? And I think the reason it took so long to name that 4th guy is because they wanted it to be a big top 10 guy, but it fell through. So they ended up going with the newcomer to Glory in Kirill Kornilov, who's 7-1 in his career from Russia. I don't know much about him.
No one knows much about him on that.
He ends up taking on Wilness here, Jafar Wilness, in the first round. The other semifinal will be Anderson Silva against another new signing, and Mr. Lant from the Netherlands, 36-6, 1 draw. And he's they announced Ismail's signing when we were at Glory 27. He's a guy that is very experienced, definitely one of the best. Glad to see him finally in Glory. And really, I think because Wilness ends up kind of getting this short-term replacement in Kornilov, I think that really bodes well for him winning this tournament, because Silva versus Lant, I think, is a very close fight, and you got to imagine the winner then has to go on. Wilness has an easier path to the finals, and that could bode well. So Wilness, I think, kind of lucks out in this whole thing. It's unfortunate because if Lant Silva ends up being a war, which I very much think it could be, all of a sudden you have Wilness coming in, who, again, maybe the Russian will surprise us here, but Wilness should get by Kornalov here, and if he does, he should be the fresher guy, unless something crazy happens between Silva Lons, a first-round knockout, which I don't see happening.
It's tough, and I agree 100%. If it was matched up any other way, I would expect Silva and Lant to be the final. But just the way it's matched up, it's tough for them to just go at each other. But it's exciting. I mean, I can't count Kornilov off. Don't know a whole lot about him, so he could bring it too. But if I'm looking at this tournament and I had to pick someone right now, I think Silva runs through it, man. His leg kicks are nasty.
Silva's got a lot going on, man. He's not only a powerful, mean kickboxer, he just got his first MMA fight signed a couple days ago. So he's got that debut. I think that comes in May. So, he's got a lot of prospects going for him. I think he wins the tournament, but we'll see.
You guys are both going Silva?
Yeah, I mean, I'm Silva. After his last performance was beautiful. So.
I do want to say, touch on another point, too, about Insante. I don't know how big his other organization is, but, man, I feel like you'd favor Glory right now.
Hey, well, you know what's crazy? Insante, who was it that he fought in the UFC? He was someone's debut in the UFC. I didn't know Guto actually fought in the UFC. Yeah. Really? Yeah, let me see if you can find Insante online for us real quick.
I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, you go find your thing. I got Insante coming.
All right, well, I think it's a dark horse, because I think realistically, I think Silva would be my pick, but I think him against Ismail is a very tough matchup, and I think just for being different in the dark horse, I'm gonna go Wilness, just because I think he'll have the easier path to the final. He'll be a fresher fighter, as opposed to Silva and Lant. That's not saying he's the best fighter of these four
in the tournament format,
but I think in the tournament format, I think that could be the difference.
Yeah, that's 100%. I mean,
you ready?
I could see that.
There's one fight in the UFC. Oh, he had two. He lost to Anthony Proch by rear naked, and he got KO'd by Derek Lewis.
Really?
Yeah, small world. We're going to be talking about that other fool tonight, but it's kind of crazy, huh? Yeah.
Interesting.
I think that's Derek Lewis's debut, actually. Let me look. In the UFC. Well, no, second fight in the UFC for Derek Lewis was Guto.
Yeah, it's WGP 29. It's supposedly one of the biggest kickboxing events. It's going to be held in Latin America, and I believe is that Panama? I'm trying to look up the information here. It's not saying the country. It's just saying biggest event in Latin America. But yeah, Guito Insante's super heavyweight title battle against Lucas Alcina. That is coming up on the... I'm trying to find the date here. I think it's coming up, though. That's why I was saying that he couldn't fight in the Glory fight, because he's taking on
he's a super heavyweight over there, too.
So
if that is a larger org, I can understand. But at first, I didn't get it. I was like, man.
I've never heard of WGP, but that doesn't mean that it's not like a good organization. Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, unfortunately, he's like defending his title when he could be having a shot at the Glory title. But
who knows?
The co-main event, I think, will be decent here. It'll be Larson against Elmir in the lightweight division. Elmir, talk about experience, 113-21 in his career, but just 0-1 in Glory. He ended up losing to Albert Cross, and that was actually the first Glory fight ever in Stockholm, Sweden. So it's been a while since he's been in Glory. Coming out, he will be fighting in his home country of Denmark, taking on fellow Dane Nicholas Larson. Colin's laughing at the picture.
I don't want to talk about this.
Check it out. He's 1-1 so far. He hasn't fought in Glory since Glory 15 in Istanbul, where he defeated Steve Moxon by knockout. Yeah, I don't know. Number 9
only one
against obviously an unranked in Elmir. This is an interesting call. I think I would have put this as a super fight headliner and put the Moeska fight as the co-main event.
I can see why they didn't, but hey.
No, just look at their picture comparisons, though. Why did they take that?
I don't know.
Like, why in the world would they be like...
Only Vanderlei Silva can pull something off
scarf
like that.
and a fedora.
So, I don't know. I'm not really sure what to expect. It's an interesting fight. I mean, neither gets a title shot with a win.
I'm going to go with... I mean, you got to look at the guy with the more impressive record, and it's just like 113 wins alone. I mean, that guy's had like almost 130 kickboxing fights. That's intense. That's a lot of fights. I mean, how go back to his profile quick and see how old he is.
Elmir, I'm not sure if it had his updated age information.
Let's see if
Again,
we
we're
got
getting our
anything close.
information from Glory's official website,
See if you got
glorykickboxing.com.
an age anywhere. I don't see one. I mean, he can't be that old. He's got to be probably 20 something.
He was a European champion a couple of times back in 2011.
That's a lot of
there's
fights.
no doubt.
So he's been fighting for a
70,
while, and
yeah.
he's got a ton of fights under his belt. So, I mean, that's a
We'll
seasoned
see.
dude.
It's like I said, the McQuesca fight probably should be the co-main event, but
Hey,
I don't know.
they need stuff to headline that super fight for people.
All right, let's get to the main event. Nicky Holtzkin will be defending his title once again in the welterweight division as he takes on Switzerland's own Congolo. Looking at Congolo, I believe he ended up losing in the Glory Milan to Kareem Gaja. He did beat Cedric Doumbé, however, and then he came back at Glory 26 to beat Kareptian.
Carpet?
Did I say that right?
Correct Preptian.
Anyways, 2-1 so far for Switzerland's Johan Congolo. I kind of remember the loss there in the Gaja fight in Milan. I wasn't too impressed. I mean, he obviously bounced back and won just a month later there at Glory 26, but I think because how bad Myrtle Gronhart looked in his last fight, and maybe they didn't want to run that back so quickly, they kind of had to pick for the next best guy, and Congolo was the guy on the streak. Of course, had the win over Doumbé, so it made sense that Doumbé fought Gronhart. Yeah. But Nicky Holtzkin, I think next to his fellow countryman Rico Verhoeven, has been the most dominant fighter since Glory has started. 10-0 so far for Glory. Really hasn't even been touched. I think really other than that Gronhart fight, he has pretty much cruised for everybody. In fact, at one point between the fight at Glory 1 and his fight against Raymond Daniels at Glory 19, he knocked out 6 straight opponents. And looking at Glory overall, he has knocked out 7 of 10 opponents under the Glory banner. He's been nothing short of impressive. The Dutchman with an overall record of 88-11, as this will be his 100th professional kickboxing.
Weird, all those zeros, all those ones and zeros, and the 100.
And this is crazy. Out of all those wins, 88 wins, over half of them are by knockout.
Yeah, this guy's really
awfully
intense.
impressive.
I mean, he's kind of carrying Glory. Like, you know, there's like some champs out there that are just incredibly dominant, and Glory that are really carrying a lot on them. And this is one of the champs right now. I mean, like I was saying earlier, you don't see a lot of crazy big, like strictly Glory kickboxing records. I mean, this guy alone is just 10-0 in Glory. You know, I mean, there's a lot of guys who are out there who are like 5-5, 3-2, 1-2, you know, stuff like that.
1.
Yeah, right. 1-1, 0-1, a lot of debuts. So this guy's a veteran of Glory itself, and you know, there's gonna be a lot of eyes on this fight. And I mean, honestly, I'm just gonna be real honest and everything. It's probably just gonna be kind of another cakewalk for him. He seems pretty dominant.
No offense to Congolo. I don't see what he
but
can do to really try to outclass
so
Nicky Holtzkin.
I was going to say there's not even much to break down. I don't want to knock the guy. I don't see what he brings to the table in this fight. Just look at it alone. 10-0 in Glory. There's nothing.
I mean, you're just looking at just one of the more dominant champs that Glory will probably ever have. And it's just like right now, you're not really throwing much at this. Glory's still in its youth, and this is just like one of the really early fighters. You know, he's kind of like, you know, like Chuck Liddell, where it's just like you weren't really figuring out how you're going to beat Chuck Liddell and everything. It's like, oh, this guy's good and all, but it's Chuck Liddell, you know, kind of thing. And I feel like right now for Holtzkin, that's just he's in a good spot right now to just keep his name going.
I guess for Congolo, the one caveat is that I don't think too many people expect him to win. Maybe he can go in there, be loose, maybe do some more crazy things that Holtzkin wouldn't expect, being, I think, such an underdog.
True.
So I think if you're going to catch Holtzkin, this could be the fight. You know,
it's still a fight.
As much as it's still a fight.
So
you got to go out there and
you're
compete
right, you know?
for 5 3-minute rounds.
You never know. So, but I mean,
worst comes to worst, you just leave.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah,
you just
You
shake it.
follow the Glory main event protocol.
I expect another one of these anytime now. That was great.
All right, so that is Glory 16 or Glory 29 on April 16th. Again, ESPN 3 for the main card, the UFC Fight Pass for for the undercard. All right, we'll get right into the UFC breakdown here. UFC Zagreb was this past Sunday on Fox Sports 1. 6 fights were shown on the main card. Before we get to the main card, just a quick shout out to friend of the show, Zach Cummings, as he was able to defeat Nicholas Dalby via unanimous decision. So congratulations to Zach on another
Powerful
win.
stuff.
Also, kind of an upset of sorts as Lucas Martins defeated Rob Whiteford. I thought that was a pretty big victory there as well. And Maribek Tuzumov, a guy that a lot of people have on their radar as an up-and-coming prospect, he was able to win via TKO in the first round over Damir Hadzovic. I said that correctly? Those were kind of some of the highlights I noticed from the preliminary card.
Yeah, I know. I mean, 'cause I had rough times. I had work, so I caught probably about half of the prelim fights. I did see the Cannonier and Asker heavyweight fight in the prelims. That was a pretty nice KO way early in the beginning of the day. It was like the second fight. So it set a nice tone for the night, kind of how things were going to go.
Yeah, a lot of finishes on the undercard. Only 3 decisions, as there was 4 finishes. So a lot more. Only 2 ended up being on the main card overall. First fight of the evening in the women's strawweight division, Marina Moroz against Christina Stanciu. And this fight kind of went as we thought it would. We thought Moroz would be a little more skilled, would have a little more conditioning in this fight. And I think Stanciu, for as young as she is, making her UFC debut against a top 10 fighter in the strawweight division, I thought she held up really well. And I think if she can kind of work on her conditioning a little bit, I think she does have a bright future. But this stage in her career, that was a tough task, taking on Moroz, who did win this fight, don't get me wrong, but I felt she kind of held back a little bit. I actually thought she could have put it on a little more on Stanciu and really made this more of a dominant victory. But she went in there, did her business, and now she's right back in the thick of things. And I'm thinking possibly maybe Michelle Watterson next for her.
Possibly. Who did they just think about Michelle Watterson was lining up, though? Oh, Paige VanZant. That's a fight that they're also eyeballing, I think.
It's hard because
nice
Paige
lineup.
is doing the Dancing with the Stars.
Right,
So it's hard to
so-
say when she will, because you got to look at potentially, I think the show will go to May if she makes it all the way to the
Something like that,
final.
yeah.
So that means she couldn't really realistically take a fight till June probably.
Yeah,
Or
you're not
June or
gonna book
July.
her with that going on.
Uh,
But don't be surprised if they book a big fight for her right after that.
She,
With all
yeah,
that
she's
hype
going to
around
get a
it.
top 10
Yeah.
opponent
I
for
mean,
her next fight.
and because she'll be roughly in shape anyway from dancing. So.
Yeah, no, but because of all the hype of that show, they might even give her like a fight pass card herself. You never know. They're gonna hype her next fight up big.
Co-main event of UFC 200 confirmed.
I don't know, but yeah,
I wouldn't doubt that Fox Chicago card
I'll be all over
actually,
it.
yeah, that's
All
probably
over it like a
perfect
bread and
timing
butter.
too.
because you get people that watched her on free TV on ABC, just switched over to Fox.
Yeah,
You're going to draw in viewers.
Chicago is the biggest hub of ABC watchers in America. So
I don't know.
no,
Anyways,
yeah.
Billy wanted to go on this.
I just
this
lost it all after that.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
I think I'll try and get you back to it when we talk about Stanciu. She actually looked a little bit more impressive than I was giving her credit for. She had some good submission defense. Billy was mentioning when I walked in.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a tough fight just to come into a top 10 opponent right there. Granted, Moroz could have definitely poured it on a bit more. I think that speaks just more of just sometimes just like the fight. Sometimes you just show up on that night and you just put out a certain different output. I don't think that's a bash on Moroz having a tough time or Stanciu just catching a weak opponent. I think she'll have another fight in there, and it could be easily 115. It's got a lot of going back and forth with a lot of these women right now. I mean, they're really trying to get their bearings, and it's just with Joanna up there right now. That's kind of like a faraway thing for most champs or most women right now in that division, and they're really all just trying to work out, okay, who can get a streak here, who can beat who here. I feel like the problem they're going to hit soon, very soon rather than later, because the division's still shallow, is the issue we have with women's bantamweight right now, which is you get top 10, top 5
Get top
women.
heavy. Mhm.
Yeah, and then they all have already fought each other. And it's like, oh, well, do you want to see the third match of these two, or do you want to see the rematch of these two? And it's like, no offense to the women fighters, sometimes they don't put on the most exciting fights, so it's probably even harder to even hype a rematch between some. And it's really they kind of make them out of necessity and throw them on a fight pass card. So, but that being said, it's nice to have young, fresh blood coming into a division that's going to really need the support.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know that could happen, but this division has some of the youngest talents. When you look at the Paige Van Zants or even the Barbie, I know she takes a tough loss here. They're only 22 years old.
And I think Burroughs is like 25. Joan
Yeah.
Calderwood's like 25.
Exactly. They're all really young fighters, and it's growing so much for them. But yeah, there's a lot of things I look forward to in this division, and I didn't expect this division to breed probably one of my favorite current fighters. So it's doing big things. I'm really excited.
Yeah, well, because what this current season they just did was 115ers, right, with Joanna, or were they?
Yeah,
like,
that's
men
debuting
and-
in 10 days. It'll be 115 women and light heavyweight men.
Yeah. So I mean, and I personally believe you kind of touched on it. I think actually women's strawweight will probably actually have more talent once this new season of women come in. I feel like a lot of more women's fighters, instead of bulking up from 135, just because there's a lot of women's fighters fought in Tai Chi Palace and everything that they fought at 135, and instead of going up, a lot of them actually chose to go down towards like 125, 115 area kind of thing, and some atom weights to put on a little bit of weight and everything.
And-
so we'll probably see more life in strawweight than we would at 135, 140 area, where it just becomes people like Cyborg, Ronda Rousey, and everything,
Yeah.
where it's just really talented women.
Because the thing with the 15 is it's so new to the UFC, and the talent pool's not that big. When like if you watch like a men's 55, they got Ultimate Fighter.
Right, the
nowhere
division's
near-
like just over a year old.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you go to a men's Ultimate Fighter, you're like, whatever, we're not going to see this guy fighting top talent maybe, and who knows, you know.
Mhm.
But the 115ers, you're
don't
right
know
in
who
there
we're
with
looking at,
everyone.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, they
So I mean, Joanna kind of came out of nowhere too, and
look
everything.
at it.
Yeah,
They
so-
had that whole Ultimate Fighter season to crown the best fighter in the world,
and
Joanna
everyone
wasn't
figured
even on it.
Yeah, we figured Esparza probably would end up winning it. She did, and then Joanna just came out of nowhere, and it's like, how do you say your last name? So
For Moroz, though, if not Watterson, I think her against Beck Hyatt, I think would be a very
Hyatt would be
interesting
good.
too.
Joanne
I'm
Calderwood.
sorry, Beck Rawlings.
yeah,
No,
yeah, I
not
knew he
Beck
meant.
Hyatt.
Yeah, Rawlings, Calderwood.
A rematch.
That's right. They did just fight, didn't they? Oh no, who did see how him or whoever see who him or something
Yeah,
like that? That would be a fair fight. I would like that. She just got to win. There's a lot of hype on her.
Jessica Aguilar doesn't have a fight. No, I think she does.
I think she
Aguilar
just got,
does.
she
You know
just
what?
got booked. Yeah.
That would have been a good one.
Yeah.
All right,
so,
let's get to the next fight of the evening in the light heavyweight division. As Jan Blachowicz took on Igor Propajic. Igor hadn't been in the UFC for a while, making his debut or return in the UFC's debut in his home country of Croatia. First round was very close, but I think Propajic took, even though Blachowicz initially got that takedown, you saw Propajic able to switch around, get actually the back of Blachowicz, land some damage, and I thought did more with his ground positioning than Blachowicz. Round two, very close round, very exciting. Both
total
guys
slugfest. Probably
throwing
the most exciting
bombs.
part of the night.
Definitely probably the best round of the night.
Yeah.
By far. And again, the difference, the takedowns, as Blachowicz was able to land 2 takedowns in that frame, which led to him outstriking the Croatians 64-28. And then in round 3, he landed that takedown early. Propajic couldn't do much to get back up or threaten with any sort of submissions, as Blachowicz outstruck him
Yeah, he just kinda ran away with
58-11
it. Yeah.
in that third round, en route to taking a unanimous decision victory. All judges scoring it 29-28 in favor of the man from Poland. And while this had its moments, Blachowicz did what he needed to do. He knew that he couldn't stand at range too much, and he couldn't really be in the clinch against Propajic, who had some Greco-Roman background, so he knew that if he could get on top and be in control, he wouldn't really get threatened with much submissions, and he was able to follow that game plan to a T and get back on the winning track.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Blachowicz just kind of doubled the significant strikes or total strikes output just from Propajic stuff. I mean, Propajic hung in there, but he hasn't fought in a while, and I was hoping he would do better. But
I will say, man, I don't know how old Igor is. He's got a chin. He was coming
I
forward.
think he's 38.
he's about 38.
And I don't think he looked phased. He kept saying, keep it coming. I mean, the wrestling was the clear difference, even in the striking, but Igor looked good. Unfortunately for him, he was exciting, so maybe we see him again.
37.
37.
He's exciting. Maybe we see him again.
Yeah.
I
don't
think
know.
they might give him one more. very rarely do you see a guy come back for a second stint and just get one fight.
Well, he's a company man too. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Bacchus has been around for a minute.
And you know they're going to be in Europe again. They probably throw him on another European card. If he wins, maybe he sticks around for a third. But if he loses, well, thanks for coming back, Igor. And, thanks for coming in for two fights.
Know either of these guys, neither of them are going to really go crazy far into the light heavyweight division right now. So it's like, keep the name.
Right. Next fight of the evening. How this earned a performance of the night bonus according to Fight Metric, I don't know, but the Tim Johnson Tiberi
all that
fight,
mustache is pure heart.
I don't know. It wasn't great. It wasn't as bad as the Johnson Rojhalt fight, but it's no. I felt like Tiberi, he definitely had the octagon jitters. I think he was really worried about being pushed up against the cage and being taken down by Tim Johnson, which takedowns didn't really happen. Johnson did push him up against the cage, tie him up, didn't really allow Tiberi to do much. But other than that, really wasn't much going on. Johnson really controlled from those two positions, probably took the first 2 rounds. I actually thought Tiberi may have taken the first round because I thought he did more damage when it was at range. But in round 3, you could tell Johnson was kind of tired from trying to hold Tiberi up against the cage. And then Tiberi realized, I got to do something because I might be down 2-0. Really had a good third round, but by that point, it was kind of too late to come back on the lead established by Johnson, and the American walks away with a unanimous decision victory, 29-28 on all 3 cards.
I don't mean to backtrack real quick because you went into it before I got to make this point. I just want to, before I get John, I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Blachowicz.
How'd you like a John Vellante matchup?
I could do that.
That top 15,
I could do that.
Coming off a loss.
I think Blachowicz, Vellante is a good fight.
I was thinking of that, and I just really like that fight.
Yeah, no, that's a solid fight. I like that. Yeah, and how much to say about the Tim Johnson fight? I mean, he kind of did what he was going to do.
I hope that's a mistake on that performance of the night.
No, I don't think
is that...
People are talking about people are surprised that Dos Santos didn't get it and everything.
There's no way Johnson got it and Dos Santos didn't. Absolutely no way.
That
has to be a mistake.
Dana White does Dana White. Maybe they got a backdoor deal. I still think it's just part for representing.
Do you think it's just for Tim Johnson's stash?
Do you think
it has to be? I think it's grooming.
Steve Harvey might have handed him out.
Yeah, maybe. That's true.
Hey, I honestly think it's just pays for the visa to get that mustache into the country. So
he probably had to stay a couple extra minutes through customs.
I mean, he kind of looks like Mark Spitz. I'm not even going to lie. Like, the dude's kind of crazy looking.
Johnson. I don't even know who he gets next. To
give him
quite honest.
Gonzaga ain't going nowhere. I mean, Johnson's just kind of, he's got like a little streak.
Who's that Russian guy that beat Sean Jordan a couple months ago? Magomedov.
Magomedov, yeah.
He just got to fight it out.
Oh, did he? Yeah. That would have been a good fight.
Yeah, it's coming up soon.
Struve, maybe.
I think Struve's still kind of on the fence.
He did come off that loss though.
He came back to fight.
He lost,
but I thought he had another heart issue coming up.
He lost to Rojhalt in Australia.
Yeah, and I feel like he's kind of taking it easy though.
Well,
who knows? Tim Johnson.
That's not a bad fight though. If it's Stefan Struve.
Is Bigfoot still fighting?
Yes.
Shouldn't.
Yeah, yeah. He just. I mean, Tim Johnson. There's a couple fights you can make out there. Josh Barnett.
Oh, okay. All right. I can go with that. All right. Next fight, also heavyweight. Again, the starts a string of 4 straight heavy fights. Francis Ngannou against Curtis Razor Blades. And even though Ngannou really didn't land that many shots, I mean, you look at 46 landed strikes in 10 minutes, you don't think that's that impressive, but they were all power shots, and especially that straight left. Blades had no answer for that. I mean, he had a good jab throughout this fight, but unfortunately for him, he couldn't follow it up with anything. He was jabbing. I think he was actually jabbing the heck out of Ngannou, but he wasn't following up with any cross or hook or uppercut. He couldn't use it to change levels and get a takedown, as he was only 2 for 6 on takedowns. And when he did take it down, and Ngannou got up pretty darn quickly, negated his wrestling, and towards the end, those power shots that left was landing so much, ended up really closing. I believe it was the left eye of Blades, and in between rounds, the referee and the doctor conferred that it probably wasn't the best decision for him to move forward into the third, and Ngannou gets his third UFC victory and another knockout finish for him, and the first loss of Curtis Blades' career.
Well, I mean, it's kind of, to me, it almost looked like a mismatch. Just just the pace Ngannou was putting on. I mean, it kind of looked like they pulled someone out of a barbershop and then put him against the dude who just got out of prison. And Ngannou right now just came out to make a statement. He had a killer bod right now. And he just came out. He looks so crisp and quick. I mean, honestly, give him Tim Johnson. Let's have that fight.
That's
go
a
down.
good fight.
That's
yeah,
more
I like that
reasonable.
one.
That's
Now
an
you
honest
got it.
fight because those are names are like, they're kind of up there and everything, but they're not. But at heavyweight, I mean, either way, a dude's gonna win and get a streak going still.
I don't want to touch on his body again, but we
dude,
discussed this
no.
before the
Yeah.
show. Is he the most yoked heavyweight ever?
I mean,
besides
he's
Kevin
six-
Randleman,
He's
I think so.
6'4", 255 pounds,
And
and
he's
jacked.
and that's
abs.
every inch of that is muscle. His body fat is probably he probably walks like 5%.
And the
body
thing,
fat.
the crazy thing is, they
It's
said just a
insane.
couple of years ago, he was just living in Cameroon, not doing like any martial art. He's like he's like super new to the sport.
Yeah.
He's a freak athlete.
Like
Dude,
so
well, living in Cameroon, he's
the
called the
longer-
Predator, man.
the
For Pete's sake,
longer
he
the
runs
longer
through
he
the woods.
stays around, the better he's gonna get. I mean,
Yeah.
he fought a guy,
razor
albeit-
blades.
albeit his UFC debut, a guy that was supposed to be able to take him down and hold him there. He held pretty well. I would have liked to seen a little more output from him, but
He looks so good.
really, other than that, it's really hard to nitpick his performance.
Yeah, that's a good heavyweight. I mean, I like it. I'm worried. I'm so worried that it's just gonna be one of those things where he just takes a loss and then he just,
His conditioning doesn't hold up.
Yeah, and it's just like because the heavyweights right now, to be like a big name heavyweight in the UFC, you almost have to have like a
Remember
huge
the last
record.
time the UFC got a guy who's knocking dudes silly from Cameroon? He didn't last very long. I think you knew who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
So could you.
Yeah, so could you.
So hopefully he
So-
doesn't follow that path.
But Sokochu is also remembered. So hey, I'll take it. Ngannou's ripped. He's quick. He so far he was doing. I mean, his output was steady for 2 rounds, which isn't bad for a heavyweight. It's better than gassing immediately. But I mean, we'll see. To be like 255 in every pound of it, like muscle, that's gonna be a force for some guys to reckon with.
All right, co-main event of the evening: Derek Lewis against Gabriel Gonzaga, and it went pretty much how I thought it would be. Gonzaga would try to keep this thing close, not allow the powerful bombs of Lewis to happen. But it was really just a brief moment towards the end of the first round where there was a little space. Lewis capitalized, went into a flurry, landed those big shots. Gonzaga was out cold, and that's all she wrote. And hopefully that's all she wrote for Gonzaga's career too. Derek Lewis, he's one of those rare individuals where he just got, if you give him an inch, he can end you. He's maybe not the most technical guy, but he knows how to hit you and hit you that you stay down.
Yeah.
The only thing he probably has to work on, realistically, a little bit of conditioning and off his back. He's solid takedowns and solid takedown defense, but he's not threatening anybody with submissions. And I still think, Gonzaga in his prime could submit a guy like Derek Lewis. Just at this stage in his career, he ain't going to do it. And I really think that's the only things possibly holding Derek Lewis back, because he has the power to knock out anyone in this division.
UFC 2 needs an update because Derek Lewis came out and threw a head kick,
A good head kick.
and they don't allow
Yeah.
him in that game.
I think that could have broken Gonzaga's hand. Did
They-
you see how he immediately clinched?
They
after
clinched
that?
up, but they looked a little wobbled.
That
Right, he
was
looked a little wobbled.
Dude, honestly, I love Derek Lewis because the dude's a clown. He's called the Black Beast, and his fight celebration is
With
absolutely hilarious. It
celebration
makes
is the
no
best.
sense. It makes no sense. But I almost want to call him Jacques right now instead, because I feel like how an alligator would treat me. But people have been talking, with the win here, people want him to fight Mark Hunt and all this stuff. But then, him and Roy Nelson call each other out, and they like the idea of fighting each other.
I think him against Roy Nelson would be fantastic.
That's a good fight, in my opinion. Mainly because I'll touch why in the next coverage of the next part. But I like him and Roy Nelson. I think that's a really good fight. Mainly because they're just two really, charismatic fighters who kind of really bring a lot to the heavyweight division. Everyone knows Roy Nelson's the fat white American with the crazy beard and the mullet. And I mean, Derek Lewis, he's the Black Beast. He's just a monster of a fighter. They
right.
both have knockout power, and they're both entertaining. The cardio on both is suspect, but I mean, it's one of those things.
It should be good. It's going to be a fun fight.
It'll be a
it's going to be a
fun
fun
fight.
I
fight.
like
see.
Nelson, but Hunt might be too high up and might not make sense. But I really like that fight.
Well, also the Hunt's been a propensity to keep fighting in Australia and overseas, where that because of this USADA and all that, he hasn't been. His last couple of fights haven't been in America.
Right.
Derek Lewis, I think, has primarily been fighting so far during his UFC tenure obviously besides this fight, but almost all his other fights, I believe, have been in the United States. So
Yeah.
that could possibly hold thing because it's like, when's the next time they're going to go to Australia? And if Mark Hunt is
love that market
kind
there.
of adamant on that, Roy Nelson, Derek Lewis may materialize quicker than Hunt versus Derek Lewis.
And I think that's just an easier. They want to fight in July, so they could end up on that Chicago card. We
That'd
also
be
got to
perfect.
remember, Chicago or July has 4 cards right now. They have that Chicago card. They have 200, and they have 2 events before 200, Thursday and Friday. They didn't announce anything on Thursday yet, but they said there will be
Honestly,
a fight that week too.
if that's a fight,
So-
if that's a fight pass card,
I think it is.
It's good. I'm pretty sure it's a
I'm gonna
fight
be
pass
honest.
card, so-
I think Derek Lewis, Roy Nelson's not a horrible main event for a fight pass card.
Honestly, it's not. It's
I would
good.
take it.
Heavyweight division.
I mean,
needs some
Roy
eyes on it right
Nelson's
now. So
Headlined fight pass cards. He's headlined Fox Sports
people
1
know who
cards.
Roy Nelson is.
So to me, him against, you throw in a guy who's 15 wins, 14 by knockout.
The only other name I think
it's an
they
easy
could throw
sell.
in maybe is another one would be Josh Barnett.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that's a perfect time to do an all heavyweight fight pass card. Last time we had an all heavyweight card,
It was crazy.
It was a 12-minute total fight time card, an all heavyweight card. So
in
I'm
the
just
small
saying-
cage.
Yeah, I mean, you
We need that.
throw them in there, they'll be in Vegas more than likely, and it'll be the small cage in a tiny little beat up garage. I'll take that
It'll
fight.
still be bigger than the garage that World Series of Fighting was in the other day.
And we squeezed them in. That's good.
All right, let's get to the main
That's our
event
coverage
of
of
the
World Series
evening.
of Fighting this week.
Junior Dos Santos versus Ben Rothwell. First 2 rounds pretty competitive. I thought Rothwell, his movement was throwing him off a little bit. He didn't throw as many kicks as I would have liked, but I think he was landing some solid punches when it was in the pocket. But when it was away at range, you saw a great jab to the body all night by Junior Dos Santos. And I really think the beginning of the end for Ben Rothwell was the end of that second round, where Dos Santos landed in the last 15 seconds a huge overhand right that really started to swell the left eye of Ben Rothwell, followed up by the push kick that stumbled and sent Rothwell crashing into the cage. That kind of was the beginning of the end. After that, the striking disparities were pretty apparent round 1 and 2, but they start to get bigger as the fight went on, and that eye started to swell and really bother Rothwell, who couldn't see and was starting to slow down himself. As looking at those final 3 frames, you see 29-15 Dos Santos, 40-18, and then 33-11 in round 5. And besides those first 2 rounds, which I still think Dos Santos won, this was just the clinic. Dos Santos was doing what he needed to do. He was in and out. He threw a couple of nice spin kicks. He kind of mixed up a couple of things. He really just showed overall technique and hand speed, and didn't really fall for any of that weird head movement and grabbing and that weird stuff that Ben Rothwell does that's kind of affected some other fighters in the streak he's had no effect on Junior Dos Santos.
Yeah, I mean, I like Ben Rothwell. I picked him. I was part of that hype train. I still think he has a chance and time to get a shot. But Dos Santos came in just looking absolute like vintage that night or tonight. I mean, it was competitive up until he threw that Sparta kick and kind of just threw him off the cliff like that potato baby in the beginning of the movie. And then ever since then, Rothwell he was not the same. I mean, he ate a couple knees to the body, that eye closed up. And Dos Santos, as the fight went on, his footwork just got better and better, and he kept sticking the jab to the body and then getting those spinning kicks to the body eventually. I mean, it was just a clinic of – it just really seemed like Dos Santos sat down, watched tape, realized 2 things he could do to beat Rothwell. Rothwell's great, but he's kind of goofball, and that goofy half stance he has all the time did nothing for him tonight. So,
Yeah, I don't know if that or like Dos Santos's movement was just too good for him to land a shot here. But either way, Dos Santos, yeah, he moved definitely. I think Dana White tweeted like a middleweight. It was up there, man. He looked light. Hand speed was great. The jab to the body, like you said, was affected. Everything. He basically just went out there and outboxed him. By no means do I think Rothwell was outclassed, though. I think he looked great. I think the first 2 rounds were very competitive. I think the overhand right did more of the fight changing than the actual body kick. I think that was more off balance. He was rocked. But Junior Dos Santos, man, even myself, I was like, he'll never be the same. He'll never be the same after the Kane fights, the recent knockout. I was wrong. I honestly, if Junior Dos Santos looks like that, I think he's right back in the picture of beating anyone in this division.
yeah, I mean, he's got a win over the current champ right now. He's got a win over Cain Velasquez. And, like, honestly, Overeem's right up there for the the shop. He's got a win over Stipe, so it's like,
and a win over Mark Hunt.
so it's like, yeah, he's got
And Roy
wins.
Nelson.
That's the thing. If he shows up, he can get the win. It's just whether he shows up or not.
Yeah, I even think if he ran back that Overeem fight, it wouldn't be nearly the same. I
If he
think
moved the same way he did tonight, and if he did in that
he just
Overeem fight,
respected Overeem too much. If his output was half of what it was, I mean, I don't think it's
Mhm.
close.
And I feel like all he had to, because like no offense to Overeem, but total offense to Overeem, all you gotta do is kind of catch that chin, and you're going down. And Dos Santos has probably one of the best
his
power strikes in
the
the game.
the output in the first 2 rounds of this fight was already probably 10 to 20 more landed strikes than he had in the whole Overeem fight.
Dos Santos just
Like
looks
the
so
output was way
weird in
better. I
that
mean,
fight.
he threw 247 strikes in 25 minutes, which is almost I think was that 10 strikes a minute.
Yeah.
He was nowhere near that pace against Overeem. It was
No,
more like
definitely not.
half that, maybe even a quarter of that.
Yeah,
And
like
he
a
landed
quarter.
157 total. So I mean, yeah, if the output was there against Overeem, he probably could have beat him. And
And-
I think his conditioning was good. He didn't look gassed. He didn't look tired. It wasn't
I
like
think it's just a
he was
respect
winging
thing.
punches
Yeah.
at the end there. So he puts himself in a very precarious position because he gets the win over Rothwell. We all know that the Overeem has a fight against Andre Arlovski coming up very soon. Overeem wins, most likely. He gets the next shot at the heavyweight title. We also have Cain Velasquez set to take on Travis Brown. You know, we mentioned for Derek Lewis, Roy Nelson's a fight that makes a lot of sense. You know, speaking of rematch, does the Mark Hunt rematch make sense?
Maybe,
Or
but-
because if you look at, he's not. I don't think he takes on Josh Barnett coming off the loss. You don't
No,
beat Ben
no.
Rothwell to fight the guy that Rothwell just beat. I don't think that makes any sense matchmaking wise.
I'm gonna throw
So
my hat into here.
okay,
I'm gonna think, and I'm gonna say it, and I got a good chance of probably being right. I think Cain Velasquez is going to injure out, and we're going to see Dos Santos fill in against Brown. And that's a safe. I feel like that's a fair and safe bet. Or
it's not a bad bet.
it's it's not a bad one. But then a slight segue still in the main event. I want to touch on it before one of you guys do it before me. I want to see Mark Hunt Ben Rothwell now, because that's a fight where Mark Hunt's got a good
that'd
swing.
be a good rematch.
Ben Rothwell, it'll still keep him up, and he's still number 4. It'll still keep him in the top area with a win. And I mean, if he beats Mark Hunt, that's a very good win, but that's a very possible
they
fight for Mark
fought
Hunt.
back in 2011 at
So-
UFC 135 with Mark Hunt becoming victorious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably perfect to rematch that.
Yeah.
So
So
I think for JDS, you see him get the loser of the Verdum Miocic.
yeah, I see
Prop-
that happening
that-
because
that could be a
Overeem
very-
Arlovski winner is probably going to get the winner of that fight.
Well,
the
I think-
Verdum,
I think Overeem
Miocic.
Arlovski gets the winner unless Kane mauls Brown.
yeah. Which
I think
they're
Cain
trying to break
Velasquez
that Mexican market.
Trumps
so,
everyone
yeah.
if he gets the win and comes back and shows he can show up healthy.
Yeah. So we'll see. There's a lot of. It's weird to say, heavyweight's really exciting right now. There's actually a
I
lot
mean-
of really
Well, I
good
think
heavyweight like matchups
yeah.
to make right now. So there's enough dudes who are actively fighting and have good win streaks to actually kind of get excited.
All right, let's get to UFC on Fox 19 in Tampa, Florida. Again, shown on Fox broadcast television this Saturday night. Real quickly, just a quick look over the undercard. Some notable names: Omari Akhmedov taking on a guy that's not a notable name, and Elizu Zakuski, if I said that correctly. Drew
Santos
Dober,
is notable.
yeah, Drew Dober taking on Islam Makhachev. We have Michael Graves, former Ultimate Fighter contestant, taking on Randy Brown, who was on the
Randy
Dana
Brown.
White looking for a fight. This will be his second UFC fight.
I'm pumped for that.
Court McGee, a guy that, speaking of Ultimate Fighter, he actually won the Ultimate Fighter. That was the Liddell Ortiz / Rich Franklin season
Yeah.
there. Despite seeming like he's been in the UFC for a very long time, he's only 31 years old. And he actually is coming off a win at UFC 194, which was his first fight in almost 2 years with injury. So that should be interesting, taking on Argentinian striker Santiago Ponzinibbio. Also, if you haven't already, I put the link below in the description. Raquel Pennington, we just had her on the show, and she talked all about her upcoming fight against Betch Correa. With the win, Pennington probably cracks into the top 10 as she is taking on the 8th ranked Betch Correa. John Dotson returning to the bantamweight division, taking on a former Ultimate Fighter contestant and WEC top contender at one point in Manville the Anvil, Gambirian. And then we got Cub Swanson against Hakron Diaz. That's a pretty pivotal bout in the featherweight division. and then Michael Chiesa against Beneil Dariush at 155 to round out the preliminary card.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely freaking stacked. And you
I'm-
got a wedding. And you got a wedding.
No, I really like. I'm not a fan now of this card with the main event, but the prelim card is amazing. This is one of the better prelim cards in a long time.
I mean, look at these combined records of all these dudes. Like, there's so much wealth of experience in a lot of these fighters. First of all, I'm so surprised. Like, I mean,
Dotson
I knew
just lost a title fight.
Yeah, Dotson just lost the title fight, and he's headlining Fight Pass. Betch Carrera has a better record than Raquel Pennington.
She's coming off a title loss.
And she's coming off a title loss. I mean, honestly, who else is up here that's coming off title losses? So, I mean, Rose Namajunas and Tisha Torres just basically fought for the title.
Well, that's on the.
Yeah,
But, I
we'll
mean,
be getting that
there's-
to just
I mean,
a
that's the
second.
main event. But, I mean, there's just so much wealth
And
of
Dariush is coming off beating a top 10 fighter in Michael Johnson in his last fight.
Yeah, and, I mean, Kiesa's got a lot coming behind him right now. So,
Yeah, he did submitting Jim Miller in his last fight.
So, yeah, this is absolutely stacked. I think it's one of the better free cards out there for like fans to just kind of tune in. It's like, oh, I want to learn some UFC. It's like, watch this. There's so much all over the place. It's
Right.
really, really entertaining.
Of course, we had her on the show, but I'm still excited. I really like Raquel Pennington. She's one of those fighters. She's never been in a boring fight, even on the Ultimate Fighter.
Right.
I think she is going to have a good fight against Betchke. And then I'm really excited to see Court McGee. I thought he was a
Court
guy
McGee.
that
He's
when
my
he
favorite
dropped
on
to
the show.
welterweight, I thought he had some. Then he got hurt. He's been out for a while. He's just one of those guys that like when you look at him, you don't think like this guy's not really
I
much
don't know.
of a fight. Like he has a weird look about him, but he's just good.
I
don't
loved
know when
him
he's good.
since the show. I think it has something to do with my childhood love of System of a Down, but it's just like I just love Court McGee. I don't know. He's just so entertaining to watch fight.
And his story, how
Yeah.
this guy
Oh my
was
God.
like down and out. He was a drug addict. It didn't look good. He was probably most people thought he was going to OD and die in a gutter one day, and then
glad he didn't. I'm
ends
glad
up
he kept the beard,
fighting.
too.
He trains at the pit there in Utah, and wins the Ultimate Fighter and all. And then he gets hurt.
He looks like Abraham Lincoln, actually.
and he's taking on a guy who he's taking on a very exciting guy in Ponzinibbio.
Yeah, Ponzinibbio
he
is no
pushes the
slouch.
pace
That's
and
a
he
fun
throws
fight.
it,
Out of
so
that
that's a fun
Court
one.
McGee love trip there. That was.
no, Court McGee, man.
How you hate on Court McGee?
Yeah,
Listen,
come on.
I don't know, man. I'm not on Court McGee hype like that. I think he's
No,
all right,
you-
dude.
Hey, I'm
Right.
not saying he's gonna win a title. I'm just saying it's nice to see him back. That's like a name you like hear about. You're like, whatever happened to that guy? So
No,
it's nice to
yeah,
see
it's
him back.
definitely an exciting fight. The most for me, I brought it up earlier with Dotson, but man, that's his moving back up, right? It's
Yeah,
first
moving
fight
back up, yep.
So a lot of stuff to look forward to in that fight.
All right, let's get to the 4-fight main card. Starting first in the women's strawweight division, Tisha Torres against Rose Namajunas, which should be a title eliminator. I find
More
it hard
than
to
likely.
believe that the winner of this fight doesn't get a shot at the strawweight title. Tisha so far undefeated in her career and actually holds a victory over Namajunas as these two met all the way back in July of 2013 on
Torres is
Invictus
such a good
6,
record.
which saw Namajunas win by unanimous decision. And if you haven't seen that fight, go and watch it. It was amazing. I think that's still on the Fight Pass to watch if you haven't watched that all the way back to Invictus 6. I remember watching that fight. Fantastic fight. Since coming to the UFC, 3-0 for Tisha. All her wins by unanimous decision, not just in the UFC with her and in her career. And to me, that's really the only knock on Tisha is the fact that she's beaten girls, but she hasn't been able to finish them.
Yeah,
And
that's-
I think that's really the biggest difference between her and Rose because they're very similar. I mean, I think there's a 2-year difference in their age. I believe Rose is now 24, Tisha 26. One less professional fight for Rose at 4-2, who since losing the inaugural fight for the strawweight title has looked really good in defeating Angela Hill, submitting her, and then submitting and just really overall dominating
was
Paige Van
insane.
Zandt in the main event of UFC Fight Night 80. And I think luckily for Tisha, this is not going 25 minutes. I think if this was a 25-minute main event, I would really put the conditioning edge to Rose because I think Tisha, despite being a physical presence, I mean, even though she's 5'1", she's jacked at 5'1",
Yeah.
but you have seen her fade so far in the UFC kind of as it's moved on. Rose likes to go at a very fast pace, very quick, but in a 3-round fight that favors Tisha because she doesn't, need to do as much to get a victory, and she's really good at closing out rounds. For Rose, you can use your range a little bit, but I really don't think you want to stay standing too much with Tisha. She's very quick, very fast, powerful leg kicks. If you get in close, She hasn't knocked anyone out, but I feel like you still don't want to get too close because, again, with the range, she can hit you with something
You
hard.
get too close, you lose a decision.
Right. I think if you're Rose, I think you got to stay on the outside, use leg kicks, and if you see an opportunity for a scramble or a leg, grab it and try to take her to the ground. Tisha does have good takedown defense, but I think once she gets to her back, I think she is susceptible to a submission. And really, since these two last met, I think Rose has grown a little more. I think we've seen her kind of come up a little bit more. Where we've seen Tisha, Tisha's kind of stayed the same. You know, Tisha really, if you look 2 years ago, I don't think Tisha's that much better now than she was 2 years ago when they first met. But Rose, I think she's exponentially better than when these two first met 2 years ago.
Exactly what I was going to touch on. Rose's improvements have been insane. I mean, if you even look at Rose's fight in between, what was the fight in the Paige Van Zandt fight? I mean,
the Angela Hill fight.
It's insane, and her grappling looked great. We all know she's a finisher everywhere. I mean, I just like her in so many places in this fight, and I think if Tisha fades even a little bit, Rose is going to capitalize. That's the biggest X factor for me in this fight, is if Tisha starts to fade the littlest bit, Rose is going to be on her, and we've seen that in the Paige Van Zandt fight. In scrambles, I don't think anyone might be better than Rose. I thought Paige Van Zandt was so successful because she was just hustled so well in scrambles, and Rose beat her to like every one. So I don't see where Tisha can finish this fight at.
Yeah, there's a lot of top women's strawweights that are Mexican when you look at it. So, but
that's even thinking of.
I mean,
Esparza, Namajunas.
I mean, they're both born in America, so I don't.
Mexican Americanos. No, but
actually, Tisha Torres is of Puerto Rican descent.
Yeah, I don't mean to touch on.
Anyways.
I don't know. Did we already cover this on the show on how Carla makes her return filling in for some random undercard?
Oh, we'll talk about that.
Hey, when you haven't fought for over a year, you got to.
What is she like 145 right now, Carla? Because she looks huge in that photo.
She ballooned up over 130 with the. I think it was a knee surgery though, so it's hard to like.
Oh, she eat her knee, man. Come on, like. I don't know, whatever. I don't like Carla Esparza whatsoever at all. I mean, mainly because I just think she's drama.
I thought it was weird though, after so long to just kind of jump in a short notice fight. And
well, she got messed up, and she hasn't fought since getting messed up. And it's just
I get
like
the break.
Well, no. I guess like I just like emotionally, just like I get what you're saying though. Like, yeah, she took like a hard loss, and then suddenly just to jump right into a fight, it's just like I don't know if that's the best idea. I mean, that's kind of where I was going with. Nothing, never mind. Don't even worry about it. Anyway, yeah. Rose Namajunas, you guys wrapped it up the best. She's improved the most over the past few years. But Tisha Torres, no offense to Torres, but Torres has just kind of had an easy route where she just grinds out her fights and just she's been winning. So you can't really tell if she's really been improving or just being Torres. You know?
I think it was because the Ultimate Fighter. I didn't realize she was technically undefeated.
Yeah, because those fights technically don't count because they're seen as kind of preliminary bouts because the results are withheld from being published. Yeah. So it makes it like not a real fight. I don't know. It's a weird. It's a weird thing with the commission and all that. Yeah. Moving into the next fight of the evening, which will be in the middleweight division, as former light heavyweight champion Lyoto the Dragon Machida takes on former.
It's a rematch, right?
Yes, former Pride champion as well as Strikeforce champion in Dan Henderson. These two first met back at UFC 157.
Horrible fight,
which saw Machida win a split decision. I remember that fight. I thought Lyoto was just really confusing Dan Henderson. It didn't really seem like he could figure out kind of what was going on.
He just moved around
in that one. Now they're meeting 3 years later? A little over 3 years later.
Of all rematches I didn't need.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Where does this rank?
Yeah, let's see. I feel like we're either going to see Lyoto come out and just be Lyoto, who kind of just fought for a title recently. He's in title shape still, and he's still doing good.
I don't know.
He's also coming off the 3 worst knockouts of his career.
I don't know what really to expect. Yeah, you have Machida coming off back-to-back losses for the first time since 2010, which then kind of saw him eventually move down to middleweight as he got submitted by Luke Rockhold in April of last year, and then he got knocked out by Romero in June of last year. And Dan Henderson got destroyed by Vitor in his last fight, and he's lost 3 out of his last 4 fights.
Here's my problem with Dan
By
Henderson.
knockout and sub.
He got KO'd by Gegard Mousasi, the most relaxed dude who doesn't finish fights. Also, he got in the first 2 minutes, the first minute and 10 seconds of the fight. I
remember that one.
He got KO'd by Gegard Mousasi. Yep. I love Dan, but
it's kind of crazy to think.
I don't know
at his age how recently he did fight Cormier too, though, in the Warriors.
Yeah, it's it's a weird fight. I don't know what to expect. Both guys are kind of on their
I don't know what to
last legs
expect.
of their career.
I love both of them as
I
fighters.
think
Oh,
it will
yeah.
be better than
Hey,
the
this
last
is two
one.
of Billy's
though.
favorite fighters fighting right now. That's the thing.
There's
so.
no way you can't love Dan Henderson.
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And
but
same with Lyoto was such a tricky, cool new thing, but it is. They're just both at the
I don't
end of their career.
I think we're going to see a very aggressive Dan Henderson. I think he's going to go out there headhunt, and I think we may see a little more aggressive Machida because, like I said, he's only lost back-to-back losses one other time in his career. And so I think this time around, I don't think he's going to toy with Dan Henderson. I think you may see a little more aggressive
Cheetah
Machida
Couture again. That's how it's going to look. Or we're going to see Henderson do what he did to Shogun recently and just start him randomly off like some weird shuffle.
I think
spinning
Henderson
back
has
fist.
to get him in the first round. If he doesn't, Machida probably wins the decision.
wanna
If he
give-
doesn't get him the first round, I'm turning off the TV because I know how the fight's going to go afterwards.
I just want to take a minute though to give Dan Henderson credit. We'll never see someone ever again that can last so long in the sport and be at like a top 10 competitive
At
fighter.
like 2 different weight classes,
yeah,
too.
it's so impressive.
For how Jurassic Park came out 20 years ago, and for him to still be relevant since
well, there's only there's guys a couple years older fighting in Bellator that they call a freak show fight, and Henderson's still competing.
Henderson
kind of
just called them out too, actually, which I thought was
it's
kind of
crazy
funny.
when Dan Henderson's first ever MMA bout was in
Jurassic Park
1997,
He
and
was
then
the
his
main-
first UFC
he was
fight
the
was
T-Rex.
UFC 17 against a guy by the name of Alan Goes.
Alan goes nowhere. So
Yeah, he didn't
I
go.
knew
He didn't go very far after that, did he?
yeah,
right.
I'm tired, but that's I'm just looking at and talking about that fight made me sleepy. I'm sorry, no offense, love them. They're 10 years in the future now, so
I just feel like these guys are on the end. They could have just at least fed them to some young talent
I
to
mean,
hype something up.
yeah, I mean, so get someone a highlight reel. I think they fed them to
The
enough
first
people.
fight wasn't exciting. Like
Well, I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll
I don't know. I mean, both have a chance to do a crazy knockout, but it's
this is gonna be fight of the year now. We're
All
bashing
right.
it so hard.
Co-main event of the evening. Originally, at least one of these guys was supposed to be in the main event
this
as
guy.
Khabib Nurmagomedov makes his return to the UFC after injury. He has not fought for 2 years since defeating current current lightweight champion Rafael Dos Anjos by unanimous decision at Fox 11. We're now at Fox 19, so he's basically missed like 8 Fox events. If you think about it, that's a long time. Now taking on injury replacement Daryl the Saint Horcher, 12-1 in his career, 6 of 12 victories by knockout, 28 years old, and he's making his UFC debut. His only loss comes to former Ultimate Fighter runner-up and at one point was the next Anderson Silva and Philippe Nover back at Bellator 95 in April of 2013. Since then, Horcher has rattled off 5 consecutive victories. However, he has not fought since October of last year. Boy. Yeah, I don't hold much faith here in the man originally from Shermansdale, Pennsylvania. Maybe this guy has a lot of good skill, but despite the injury layoff, I think he's got a very tough test here going against Khabib, who I'm glad he stays in the card. It sucks Tony Ferguson got hurt, but I hope regardless of how Khabib does, that this is not like his fight to get a title shot. I think he should still have to fight one more regardless, whether he scorches this guy in the first or ekes out a split decision after 15 minutes. I think we got to see this guy actually show up to weigh-ins, walk into the cage, and actually like throw a punch against somebody to really say that he's back, because he's been that injury prone.
I don't know. I don't know what the UFC was doing on this fight, man.
I don't like Khabib. Yeah, no, but for real, I think Daryl Horcher is like the best striker we've ever seen, mainly because he's fighting Khabib, and I really don't like Khabib. Maybe I don't like Khabib because of the fans who think he's the best thing to hit the earth.
You know what they should have done, and no offense, they could have moved up Chiesa or Dariush to fight
Here we go.
Habib
You're
and had Horcher
What
Horcher
they
fight
could've done? You know
one
what
of
they
these other
could've done?
55ers
You know what
on the
they
card.
could have done? They could have just said, get Donald Cerrone, fight him. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's 170 or not. Let him fight Donald Cerrone. That would have been enough of a win for me to say, oh, you know, he should fight RDA. He did beat Donald Cerrone at 170. That's fine. Instead, the UFC wants to pull the covers over our eyes like I'm some schmuck. This Daryl Horcher dude better be amazing. All right. Because
There's
right now,
no excuse.
there's no reason that you took for a possible reason to get your Khabib money train 2200 guy and getting him as the last guy who beat RDA to get him to fight RDA. So now it's like, does he really earn it just crushing a can?
Mm-hmm.
But we never know. It takes one punch. I've never really seen Chris striking from Khabib. He neutralizes guys. That's kind of it.
He suplexes guys.
Yeah, which don't get me wrong. It's beautiful. It's great. That's kind of what all he does. This guy could come out and just start teeing off on his face and just grind a decision against Khabib and just totally evaporate, the any type of striking defense Khabib has. He might starch him. Who knows? 2 years is a long layoff. I don't think he should get the shot with a win here because lightweight has changed immensely. If he got injured last year and they moved his card forward, fine. But it's like,
you're gonna tell me he goes from, I don't get why they're protecting anyone because he's coming off a title contender fight, eliminator fight.
he's coming off so many injuries. Why are they protecting him?
No, I'm
done any
saying he was
favors for the
supposed to fight
Yeah.
such a big title contender in
Ferg.
why can't I think of Ferg? You're telling me you can't do what Jim said? Give him anyone that has a decent UFC record that has been proven at all?
I can name so many lightweights that have
And you're telling
no
me
fight right
they
now.
all wouldn't jump to that fight
You
in
know
a second down. Cerrone, everyone, I don't get what they're doing with this. And I think what I'm scared of most is it's exactly what Jim said, and they're going to try and fast track him to the title by getting some nobody.
Exactly.
And it's a spit in the face of the whole division.
It really
so
is
stupid because it just rewards.
And you got guys like Ferguson, even though he injured this fight, who's on a massive winning streak. You have Eddie Alvarez, who's coming off beating a former champion in Anthony Pettis.
Yeah.
You got guys in this
It makes
division.
me sick. I mean, I wanted Ferguson to knock his block off. Now
We're not even mentioning Conor McGregor. You know what I mean?
There's so many
I hate just like the Khabib just thing that he should get the title shot and he's God's greatest gift to earth because he's 22-0 and he just wrestle fucks, dude. Pardon my language, but it's just like the division isn't what it was 2 years ago. Anthony Pettis, when he left, was the best guy out there. And he was supposed to fight him. He injured out of that fight, and RDA came in and stomped face. And now everything has changed at lightweight. We have seen so many dudes come and go at lightweight now. It's completely different. Dustin Poirier is almost a top 5 guy, in my opinion. I think if he beats Bobby Green, I think he goes right up there. Michael Johnson just lost to Nate Diaz, and Nate Diaz just beat Conor McGregor. You're telling me Khabib's going to come back, beat Darrell Horscher, and then get a title shot? It's frustrating.
How much people bring up that RDA one? Let's not talk about the lightweight picture. Let's talk about RDA alone. If you think RDA is the same fighter, you're out of your mind.
Was 2 years ago.
Jeremy Stevens, give him the lightweight title shot. He knocked out RDA 4 years ago. Like, come on. Like, it's like, well, what is the point of that argument?
All right. Let's get to the new main event. Rashad Evans against Glover Teixeira for the light heavyweight bout. A couple years ago, I probably say Rashad Evans probably wins pretty easily, to be honest. But now, I don't think so.
It's the opposite.
They're not that much different in age. This is the crazy thing. You got Rashad at 36. Actually, they're both 36. But there's a difference. Rashad has fought once in 3 years. And, Glover has been a steady competitor since joining the UFC
he just
in
beat the guy fighting
2012, including finishing Ovince St. Preux and Patrick Cummins in back-to-back fights. The reason I say this is because a couple years ago, Evans, would have been able to grind out even a guy with tough takedown defense in Glover Teixeira. But now I don't think he'll be able to get Glover to the ground. And standing-wise, yeah, Evans is a little trickier, but Glover Teixeira kind of reminds me, I always compared him like the Albert Pujols of MMA, where he's just a machine. He just keeps coming at you. He throws bombs. He can go 25 minutes. He never really, he's almost at that same pace. He never gets too high. He never gets too low, and he's always a threat to knock you out. And I think at this stage in Rashad Evans' career, with all the injuries he had and lack of activity the last few years, I don't know if he can really stop Glover Teixeira. I just don't see how he can do it. He can maybe catch him with some head movement and stuff, but I think eventually, like I said, that mentality and that machine-esque quality that Glover Teixeira, I think, will eventually wear and probably even knock out Rashad Evans.
It's crazy to me. This is same here, but Rashad is kind of funny in MMA. You can look at him and say, man, he's washed up. He's on the end of his career. He's 36, and Daniel Cormier's out here hitting the peak at 38.
Mm-hmm.
It's so weird how MMA works, but it just watch the Bader fight. they didn't look like they could compete with anyone of anything.
Well, look at his Bader fight. Look at his Nogueira fight. I mean, he got completely dismantled in the Jones fight. The Dan Henderson fight was a joke. I mean, he got, one win on Chael Sonnen, but I mean,
Really, both those fights were awful. The Little Nog and the Dan Henderson fight were not very good fights.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, this dude just had kind of like some schmucky fights. He beat a smaller.
And then he
Chael
beats a
Sonnen.
middleweight. Yeah. Then he beats
and
a
it's
middleweight,
just like-
and then does
Anything
absolutely nothing against Ryan Bader.
2012 and later is really just.
Yeah, you gotta dig for like a crazy like, oh man, this is Rashad Evans at his peak.
The Phil
kinda
Davis
thing.
fight's probably the last one. That was almost 4
He ended
years
that
ago.
Tito Ortiz hype train after Tito, slumped the crap out of Bader. But it's just like,
Because that was a rematch.
but it's like
between the
it's
two.
Tito Ortiz. So the last exciting thing I've seen him in is getting KO'd by Machida.
Even the Rampage fight. I mean, he was pretty rocked in that fight early.
Yeah. And that fight, I remember the season of Ultimate Fighter leading up to that, and I was so ready for it.
Yeah,
and
he
I'm
made
just
that a
like,
boring fight.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Rashad Evans, honestly, now that I look back on it, he's kind of a boring fighter.
No, he is.
I've
Other than that knockout of Sean Salmon in
That's
his
like his-
second ever UFC fight, that's it. Oh, and the Chuck Liddell
The Chuck
knockout.
Liddell one.
That's
Yeah.
it. Those two, and then
Well, what a bland dude.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like,
He's
Glover-
good. Don't get me wrong. Like I like Rashad, and I respect him. Even going in the Ultimate Fighter
I
at
mean,
heavyweight, it's impressive.
he's a Michigan State guy, so
But now at 36, man, he's been doing good with the Fox analyst. I just don't see him.
he's kind of basically like the head coach there at Black Zillions.
yeah. It's
He was a good face on the Ultimate Fighter, and I mean that's what it is. That's really what it was. Just another alum who had like a good
I think
personality.
if he does lose to Teixeira and he loses soundly, I think Rashad will retire.
Bellator, get him up in there in Shamrock. But look at Glover's record.
God.
Glover's killing people still, literally, probably killing people. I mean,
it's crazy to think OSP can take that loss so recently.
He has one decision win in the UFC, and that's Rampage. Otherwise, he's finished every other fight he's won in the UFC.
yeah, that's insane. I mean, and they're good finishes. That's the thing. Like Glover's kind of a madman.
Another thing, this is backtracking on the Khabib thing now. Do you not think if anyone filled in, this would have been a way better main event? If you booked Khabib Cerrone, I mean, I just think this is a main event is so weak.
Yeah, no,
Oh, yeah.
it is, especially for a Fox card. Think of the last. Well, actually, the last Fox card is probably not the best example with Johnson against Bader,
Okay,
but
well, the only
even
reason
that-
but even that's like
At least
just
Johnson's
as a main
relevant.
event. Yeah, just as a main event, it was
only
good.
reason
This
it's got
card's
it-
better than that New
the
Jersey
only reason
card.
it's got it.
But you go back to, I think it would have been they had a December. That was Dos Anjos and Cerrone was the December Fox with a co-main of JDS against Alistair Overeem.
Look at that.
Let's just compare that for a
Yeah.
And
second
Khabib was already
to this.
billed the main event.
I'm just glad we didn't fly out for this fight. I'm gonna be
Yeah, we
honest.
were
we were talking
contemplating
about it, and I'm kind of like, no offense to the card. I mean, but Rashad Evans, he's got that main event slot because people know who he is. He's been around for
And
a
it's
while.
two still top 10
Right.
guys.
Sort
All right.
of.
Yeah, sort of. All right, let's get to picks here. Tisha Torres against Rose Namajunas, women's strawweight division to kick off the card. Man, this is a tough fight. I really do like both girls, but I like the X factor of finishing in Rose Namajunas. So give me Thug Rose.
Rose Namajunas. I'm gonna make another bolder claim, and I think if there's anyone in the UFC that can bring that fight to Joanna, it is Rose.
I won't make that claim, but I think actually Rose will probably finish it really quick into the first round. I think she's going to just surprise Torres.
Machida against Henderson for the second time, middleweight division. I'll go Machida.
Anyone got a coin?
I don't have a lot of confidence in it, but that's who I'm going
I'll
with.
tell you who loses, the fans.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Machida's probably a little fresher. I mean, as far as age alone, Machida maybe has a little
Yeah,
more.
he's still
left.
8 years younger than Dan
The
Henderson.
problem is she doesn't throw enough head kicks or anything
No,
like
the
that
thing is
anymore.
though, just looking at how easily Vitor caught him, Henderson takes barely a punch now and he can go down. I mean, love him to death, but Machida's too quick. Still,
Yeah, I got to go with Henderson because honestly, who knows what'll happen here? I'm going to just bank on the chance that he somehow catches him when everyone's just really confused.
Is anyone not picking Habib?
I'm not
I'm
picking
not.
Khabib.
I'm not.
picking
You're
Orchard.
both gonna pick
I'm
the
going for the
Orchard?
upset. Yeah,
Really?
I'm going for the upset.
off of pure
because I want to look like
upset just.
I want to look
hate-
like a prophet.
Yeah.
I want to look like a prophet
Okay.
on this pick.
I would
so.
never bet money on Horseshoe, but I will say I hope he wins this fight.
Just
I'm
your
picking him.
reputation as an analyst. All right.
People already hate me. I already grew out a mustache. Let's do this.
Just kidding, but seriously. All right, I'll take Habib. Just to be the one person that
Schmuck.
takes it. All right. And if I didn't
You
make
and guys on win streaks, man. I swear.
if I didn't make my pick, if I didn't make my pick clear in the breakdown, I'm going with Glover Teixeira. If I didn't make that apparent, I try not to, but
Hey,
I couldn't help
if
myself
the
in that
glove
one.
fits,
So
I'm going with Glover too.
yeah,
That's terrible. But yeah,
he's
Glover,
fighting Cuba
man.
Gooding Jr. So
If- I do hope Rashad does something exciting in this fight and has something left. But like you said, Glover's a machine.
They're kind of like the black and white version of each other. If you look at it, they got like the same facial hair.
and it is
everything. They got this-
ATT versus Black Zillions.
There you
There
go.
you go. Look, they almost have
If that means anything,
Yeah, no,
probably
Does
not.
it?
But
I don't think. Yeah.
I don't know.
I
I'm
think-
I'm
I
just
think
letting the fans know that's a thing.
American top team Glover Teixeira for the championship belt next after he beats Rashad Evans. You heard it here first.
Wow.
Talk about bold claims.
Wait, no.
Middleweight.
All right,
Winner gets a title eliminator fight against Ryan Bader.
or Gustafson if he ever wants to fight again.
Hey, Gustafson, you're always just a one knockout win away. One knockout loss away. So let's see what happens.
All right, any final thoughts, Billy?
Just skipped right over me.
I mean,
I was gonna get to you in a second. I'm working left, right to left here.
yeah, UFC, man, you dropped the ball on this one. There's so many things you could have done with Khabib, this main event, and this card, and it's really upsetting.
All right, he is Billy Brant. You can follow him on Twitter at WBrand21. Colin Camper running our Facebook page, facebook.com/Beyond the Cage Podcast. Please like it. We are 43.
50. I was gonna say 50.
No,
I'm
I
like,
think
we
we have-
went down.
We are 43 likes away from 500. We're giving away fantastic prizes. Head over to our Facebook page. Please like us today. Anyways, Colin, your final thoughts.
Oh, I don't know. The UFC's just putting on a really weird card. I mean,
I really started to think they're going to sell.
I think so too. I think they're cashing out as hard as they can. That's why McGregor got Diaz. That's a whole nother Eddie Bravo theory I got going on right now.
No, I
I
kind of
think that-
buying into it now, man. They're not looking at the long side of anything.
Well, I mean, look at all the stuff that's been going on. They're kind of just letting fighters go to Bellator and everything don't have money value, even though like Matt Mitrione's a company man. It's like,
Man, Mitrione ain't anything that's making me think, but
but
I
no,
mean,
I'm just saying like any
let
other.
Jared Rochelle go.
Well, if Rashad Evans and all these other schmucks around and Matt Mitrione gets one contract, runs out, and then Sunday's like
Gets
not
his
bad.
eye obliterated
in
by Travis
heavyweight-
Brown.
Yeah, see, that was a domestic abuse all over the place. So I don't know. UFC's going to sell. Glover Teixeira's getting the title shot by the end of the year because John Jones probably going to commit a felony by some point in time. So let's make it happen, Dana. Khabib versus Conor McGregor. I'm
Do
done.
we think Jones goes out? We see Glover OSP.
What's the over under on him getting a felony? I know our show just ended. Hey, you guys have a good night. Thank you very much. This is Jim Gramm. I'm Colin Camper. Shout out to what's it, Tiger the Bear or
Gorilla the Bear.
Come on,
Gorilla
man.
the Bear?
Yeah, we got him.
Our guy who does the engraving
AJ
on the
Hiller.
plates. AJ Hiller.
He's
Come
the
on,
MMA
man.
memorabilia master.
Your number one dude. This is the
I'm gonna let you guys
signature
do
now.
this.
Oh man, dude. Who else do we shout out to?
Fight chicks.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
They don't sponsor us anymore, but we'll give a shot.
They were
Hey.
nice to us at one point in time.
Hey, yo. Shout out John Franklin. Get Glory over to Detroit. I
There we
Yeah,
go.
swear
that's a serious
on my
one.
father's grave, I will buy you dinner and a beer if you come out to Detroit.
Shout out Jared Rochelle, wherever you are. I'm
Rest
sure
in
you're
peace.
watching. Yeah, you're
Rest in
watching
peace,
somewhere.
Jared Rochelle. We'll always remember you.
There's too many people on my list, man. Who
Yeah.
else do I shout
Long
out?
one. 209 Caesar Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. It's 2 a.m.
All right. I'm Jim Graham. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. And just in case for those wondering, we are not previewing the Bellator kickboxing debut / MMA fight because it is technically not going to be broadcast in the United States this weekend, even though the event is going to take place this weekend in Italy. They're going to show it after Ben Henderson takes on Andrei Korzhakov for the Bellator welterweight title. So we will cover it next week, just in case you were wondering why we didn't talk about it. That's why. So also Risen's next week as well with our good friend Darren Cruikshank. Speaking of stashes, I don't know if you've been following him on
Oh,
Instagram,
yeah,
but
his has
he's
been
been sporting.
coming out
I hope
beautiful.
he keeps it for the fight. I really do.
Question: Is Risen gonna air live? This is it gonna be delayed or?
I think it might be it's
Last
gonna
time it
air.
was
It's
live.
gonna air next weekend. and that's with that tag team
16?
main event grappling. I think it's
I forgot that's happening for real.
that's the main event. The tag team grappling match
this
with
weekend?
next weekend.
23rd?
This weekend.
16th,
It's the 17th. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'll
we'll
have to find
break
a
down
time.
a
that
lot of
I
fun
hope it's
stuff
Sunday.
next weekend.
as
Yeah,
well.
no, this is kind of
So we wanted to
intense.
let people know because we weren't sure about the Risen thing whether we were going to be able to see it in time, so we didn't want to like hype it up too much, and also because the main event's not like an MMA fight. I don't know, it's a weird situation. Anyways, for Billy Brant and Colin Camper, I am Jim Gramm, and thank you for listening to another edition of Beyond the Cage.